This is Talking Tempo. I'm Quincy Campbell, and in this week's pod, Nate and Brad discuss Nate's experience at the Tempo vs. Connecticut preseason game on Wednesday, April 29th. Brad goes over some court geography in the segment Teaching Tempo, and next, Tempo's player moves and current roster situation is discussed. And lastly, Tempo's offensive actions are broken down from the Tempo's 2 preseason games. Now cue the intro.
Coming through, he inerts, puts it up, knocks it, look for Rice with all the space, takes the...
Welcome to Talking Tempo. I am Brad Campbell, joined by Nate McKibben. This podcast is dedicated to breaking down everything about the Toronto Tempo, Toronto's brand new expansion WNBA franchise. So, Nate, you were at the first ever Tempo game, I guess you would call it, not official, but preseason game on Wednesday, April 29th. Give me a little bit about how that feeling was. What was that atmosphere like?
Yeah, atmosphere was great. About an hour and a half before game time, we were already lined up to get into the building. There was already a lineup of people out there. It was great to actually see the facility set up for basketball. I wasn't able to get there for the court reveal. People slowly started coming in. I was a little bit worried about the crowd, but by the time the opening tip went up, it was basically full. And actually, the thing I was most struck by is just the accessibility of everything. It's a small venue, so you get an opportunity to be up close. I mean, obviously, you have the regular amount of security, but, players saying hello to people in the crowd, people mingling and sort of catching up with the basketball community. It was really kind of neat to be able to see players, coaches, administration, and just people up in the crowd just sort of mingling and celebrating basketball. And the other thing, too, about accessibility is it's just way more affordable than some of the other professional sports teams. So a lot more younger people, a lot of families, just a very different atmosphere than you might find with the Raptors, not as much corporate seating, not so many people that are, up in the mezzanine level. Even as the game started, people were very invested in what was going on the floor, and you saw that at the end of the game. I know Toronto lost. I haven't been part of many exhibition basketball games that felt like a playoff atmosphere. People were really getting into it at the end, and I think they understood what it was, but just a great atmosphere to be part of and a great way to start things off.
Yeah, that's great. I watched it on the app, on the WNBA live app, and obviously looked good on my end. Atmosphere looked incredible. People looked into it. I'm sure it's going to be even more bananas come the season opener on Friday, May 8th, which we will both be attending. We can put some content out there as well while we're at the game. But great. It's as you described to me when we were talking off mic about it, almost sounded a little bit like NBA Summer League. You're saying, where like players and people and personalities are walking by and you can almost talk to them and things, or maybe like a Major League Baseball spring training where the athletes are a little bit more right up on you, and executives and people who are working there and whatnot as well. So nice intimate atmosphere. It sounds like, which again, it would be great for the growth of the Tempo and just get fans more engaged. And the one question I wanted to ask you, how was the accessibility to the Coca-Cola Coliseum? How was it getting in and out?
Getting in was great. I will say this, at halftime and during the quarter breaks, get ready for long lineups for the bathrooms. It's an older facility. By no means was it built for basketball. So there is some tight spaces. And if you're claustrophobic, you might have to pick and choose your spots to go get a drink or to use the bathroom or when to exit the building. But I think it just sort of added to the whole atmosphere. Part of what I talked about before is, before the game, Tamika Nurse was walking through the crowd and got a chance to catch up with her, and she's doing the broadcasts. I got a chance to see Kayla Drummond, who's a player in our community who was at Crestwood and then over at Lafayette down the NCAA. I think one of the cool things is this is not an MLSE product. So they brought in so many Canadians to sort of fill in a lot of the administrative and a lot of the day-to-day stuff. So everywhere you look, there was someone. But yeah, there's not a lot of space in between. But you're definitely going to have to chart your own path as you go out or try to exit the building. But I think it adds to the atmosphere. It seems special. It seems like a really cool place where a lot of people in the basketball community can congregate. But yeah, if you don't like tight spaces, might not be the best place for you in between quarters and halves.
Great. Well, again, like I said, we'll be there on the season opener Friday, May 8th, and I'm sure it's going to be crazy and a lot of fun. Before we go any further into the meat and potatoes, so to speak, of the pod, just want to ask everyone to like, share, and subscribe if they can, so we can grow this podcast and and get this information out and build our community here. Okay, time for court geography. We thought it would be good to, obviously we're talking a lot about technical things when we're going through videos, a lot of offensive actions. I'm sure throughout the season we'll also get into some defensive things. So just in terms of some of the terms, basketball terms that are thrown out, we'll call this court geography. I may use different terms from what Nate uses. Sometimes these terms are regional depending on where you are in the country. So hopefully some of these terms will understand and know what's going on. So the first term we're going to talk about is the nail. So the nail is right in the middle of the foul line, right in that area. And it's called the nail because when they traditionally make basketball courts, that's where they would start, right in the middle. And then that's how the half circle, the 3-point, the measurements to the basket, that's how everything is going to be measured actually to make the court. From a basketball standpoint, we refer to the nail right here. In this situation, we use the nail because it's a point on the floor that we refer to. A lot of times defensively, you might want someone at the nail off the ball in that position. So someone may be at the foul line or at the nail. Okay, so you may hear us refer to that from time to time to go over some court geography or what's going on. So number one, that's the nail. The second is we have the slot. So what we've seen in our first video, and I would encourage you to go check out that first pod that we did on our YouTube channel or listening to it on Spotify, is there's a lot of spread ball screens. Okay, so there could be situations where you have a spread ball screen, okay, which means you want those 4 pieces, those 4 people on the court spread as much as possible. I put numbers out here. Your point guard's usually the 1, 2 guards the 2, 3 is usually your third guard or small forward, 4 is your stretch 4 or power forward, and then you have your 5, which would be your center or modern day another forward potentially. Okay, so in these types of ball screen situations, you're going to hear us refer to the slot a lot. The slot is essentially where the 1 and 2 are right now on the court. So in terms of that court geography, that slot is kind of that area nice and spread on the court, okay, to really maximize and stretch the defense. So these areas right in here, okay, we're going to call the slot. Okay, also, you might hear on broadcasts or on our term slot drives. So a player may have the ball, okay, and then all of a sudden they penetrate right down the slot. That would be a slot drive to the basket, okay, for court geography. So that's slot number 2. Okay, the third is what is referred to as the short corner or the dunker spot. So this is a spacing spot on the floor, just off the edge of the key on both sides, probably right in this area, right about here. And it's a very interesting spacing spot. A lot of times teams will have their 5s or their big spacing in those situations. A lot of times what we like our guys to do is there's a little, usually the backboards here, there's a little space behind the backboard. We want our 5 spacing butt to the end line and right down here in the short corner. Because a lot of times if there's drives to the basket, somebody drives to the basket, if we can make their big man come over and help, okay, a nice 2-foot jump stop, there's a nice little pass or drop off right to here, and then a little layup, a little pivot action. We call that a 21 finish. Might be something we can show a little bit later. But those areas right here are called the dunker spot or the short corner for spacing. If you were a child of the 90s, as I was, it was actually called the Russian spot. I guess because at some point the Russians used that spot to space. Okay, so of those 3 terms, we'll keep with today: the nail, the slot, and the short corner. And in future pods, we'll go over some other terms and court geography as well. Now we'll get into the rest of the pod. All right, so Nate, where are we at now? We've had 2 preseason games. Preseason games are over. There needs to be some roster cuts, and we need to get down to 12 roster spots and 2 development spots. So what does that look like as of right now?
Yeah, I'll share the document that we shared before. Obviously, we've changed things a little bit just based on what's happened over the last week. So far, Mabry, Maddie Rocky, Christy Wallace, and Elizabeth Belagoon have all been released from the team, none of which is really a surprise. I would still project a very similar roster, although I do think Lexi Held, especially in the first game, showed that she's a WNBA player. I think you got to find a way to get her on the team, but that makes it tough because you can only keep one of Maria Conde, Lexi Held, and Katya Laxa. I think those are the three players that are vying for the last two roster spots. I would assume Tiona Key and maybe Laura Juscat are the development player spots. But this is also a unique thing that's going on right now where if you sign a rookie contract, you actually have to waive the rookie before you sign them to a development contract. So there's been a couple of drafted players this week at other teams that have been cut from the team, and fans have really sort of lost it a little bit. But I think it's just the way that they've set up these developmental positions where you might actually have to cut a rookie just to be able to sign them as a development player later. And I think that's why certain programs or certain teams in the WNBA have just gone about just hiring them or signing people directly as a developmental player. So we have two
Now,
rosters.
with that,
Sorry, go ahead.
sorry, with that, do you think, so if you have a rookie selected and you cut that rookie, can other players come in and grab that rookie for their roster before they're put on a development position for that team that just cut them?
I'm still looking into that a little bit, but it's my understanding that you can. We've actually seen rookies be cut and actually claimed by other teams. There's a player by the name of Oldacre who played at Texas. She was actually already been cut by Dallas and then was picked up by Connecticut. So I wouldn't be surprised if you saw a little bit of movement that way. I also wouldn't be surprised if Toronto only goes forward with 11 to see if they can sort of scoop up someone else that's being cut by other teams. You know, even that Connecticut team that they played on Friday, I was quite impressed with Regan Beers. Know her fairly well from watching her play at Oklahoma and Washington State before that, and even with the AmeriCup team with Team USA this past summer. I think there could be some movement, and Toronto might even be able to pick up another post, which I think is going to be an area of need as we go through this. So it'll be interesting to see if teams do sort of snatch other rookies off of other teams if they're having to be waived before they're signed to developmental contracts.
So as we take a look at this depth chart and breakdown, we know, as you mentioned, there's just been some cuts. What, and we've seen two preseason games so far. We'll obviously break down some video coming up. But with this roster, what do you think? Now, again, we're Tempo, we're an expansion team here. There's going to be some lumps and there's going to be some growing pains, as they say, throughout the season. And of course, lots of roster changes as things go through. But with this roster right now, what do you think the challenges are going to be for the Tempo?
It's all through the forwards. I think they have a legitimate WNBA team through the guard spots and even the small forwards, so 1, 2, 3. I think 4 and 5 is going to be a challenge. I think you saw the upside and sort of the downside of Nara Sabli. She's someone who's always shown great potential and then got hit in the head and is now in concussion protocol. So they're already starting to go through a little bit of injuries of her, and that's always been the knock on her. Not that I am blaming her at all for getting a head injury, but that she's always sort of been one that's been in and out of the roster just based on availability. Isabel Harrison is still in a cast. So when you look to the forwards, Feg Benley right now is really your only forward that's played so far that's going to be part of your rotation. I do think Milic, now that she's here, she was on the bench in the second exhibition game but didn't play. I'm assuming just based on the fact that she's just rejoined the team from Europe that she'll make the team. But post depth is going to be something that they really struggle with. And you saw that against Connecticut, you know, the rebounding and the post defense. Tiona Key looks active. She looks athletic, but like she just got buried a couple times by some of the bigger posts. And maybe not even Griner or Beers. Like even Aaliyah Edwards just looked like someone they couldn't really handle in the post. So I think Feg Benley can definitely guard. I just think as a group, the defense, the rebounding, and the shot creation is going to be something they really struggle with, especially since they're playing Giscati at the 4. And I just don't think she's that spot. And they're going to have to play 9 at the 4, and that's even smaller. So there's an awful lot of teams with size in the WNBA, whether it be some of the top teams or even some of the teams that are projected to finish below Toronto. But it's going to be continuously part of the conversation until they can address it with 1 or 2 more players.
And what we weren't able to see as well in these two preseason games is what's more than likely going to be the Tempo's leading scorer, Marina Mabry. Was a DNP, did not play in those games either. So interesting how we've got this short preseason. We've got a couple of games. The Tempo, it looked like in that first game, played a lot of the players that they wound up cutting the next day, maybe trying to get them some run and take a look at what they have. So, it's going to be really interesting Friday, May 8th here in that season opener. Who's going to be healthy? Is Mabry back in the lineup? We're going to assume that she is. And, we're really going to get a true test at that point. So what we can tell, and much of some of the system stuff we've seen more than likely, is going to be similar and moving forward. But according to health, according to potentially some pickups, obviously we have Conde as well, right? That hasn't reported, I don't think, yet to the team.
So people haven't seen Conde play, Milic, Laxa. Those are the three players that people have not had a chance to see play as of yet. And I would project that at least two of them are actually going to be on the roster. So it'll be interesting that players that Tempo fans haven't even had a chance to see are going to be on that opening day roster. But just based on what they've done in Europe and some of their skill sets, I would assume that they're going to be big parts of the team.
Well, and this is the big challenge too at this part of the season. And, you and I, coaching, can always speak to it as well. It's not going to be a well-oiled machine at this point. It's not, it's going to be a little sloppy, in terms of some spacing on offense and maybe some execution. There's a bit of a fine line between, am I supposed to attack? Am I supposed to run our action here? That's obviously going to get a lot better as the season goes on. And then defensively, too, the same thing. There's going to be some miscommunications, how they're playing certain situations. Maybe there's some screening. Are we switching here? Are we not switching? Some confusion on that, how they're playing certain situations. So, we've seen definitely some of that in their two preseason games. We're going to definitely see some of that at the start of the season, but that's going to be some of the things we're definitely going to see improve as the season goes on and they get more comfortable.
Yeah, and one more thing to take a look at. Obviously, we talked about the European players that haven't reported yet. I put in a line there of potential post players. Maria Klondikova was someone who played in Minnesota last year that Toronto owns the rights to. Looking back, she actually didn't join Minnesota until June last year, and she just finished up her Russian season. I didn't realize I'd actually seen her play. I guess her maiden name was Vidiva, and I saw her as a young player at the Junior World Championships, funny enough, in Chekhov, Russia, probably 10 years ago, 12 years ago. She's a hell of a talent. And she was someone who was a first-round draft pick when she first came out. She's had a very successful career over there in Russia, and obviously not a lot of people have seen her play over the last couple of years because the Russian league is no longer part of the Euro League. Emma Miesemann is still out there. Kalani Brown is someone we haven't heard from, but obviously had a very successful career there in Phoenix. And the other name I'd love to throw out there, maybe I'm just trying to will it into existence, is Kayla Alexander. It'd be great to see another Canadian, especially someone I consider one of the most underrated players in Canada. Great pro, had a great season in Valencia. Has developed a three-point range on top of what she does defensively and on the offensive glass. I think there's some players out there that could help us. So I wouldn't be surprised if even if they went in with like 11 names on their roster and maybe try to play some of their development players early. But there are potential post players, and I do think we're just one or two post players away from really making some noise in this league and potentially even fighting for a playoff position. But it's the post that's going to hold us back.
Last thing I'll say on this is just some thoughts from those two preseason games as well overall. And again, like we said, hard to get a full idea of what this team's going to look like with Mabry not playing and some people out and other people not at camp. But I think some issues maybe to take a look at is there going to be enough scoring in this lineup? At times, are they going to be able to score enough? And on that scoring piece, are they going to have enough shooting? Once obviously in our last pod we broke down a lot of things we could anticipate to see offensively. I think we definitely saw some of that, and we'll review that today. But also, if you're going to run a lot of spread ball screen, a lot of 5-out, a lot of actions that's perimeter based without a lot of post ups, where's the shooting coming from? And part of the strength of some of those offenses for sure in sets and actions are going to be perimeter shooting or to create perimeter shots. Does this team have enough shooting moving forward? Are they going to be too reliant on that? That's going to be, questions. And also, I think too, from a transition scoring standpoint, are they going to be able to score in transition? Are they going to be able to push the ball? Are they athletic enough to get out and run the floor, get some easy baskets, get some high percentage looks? That's also a question I think that bodes going forward.
Yeah, it was just nice to see Alamond out there because she automatically picked up the pace in the second game. Anytime she was on, she was hitting ahead. She really pushed tempo, and Sykes is just different in ball screen than some of the guards they've been playing early. It was nice to see her create and get to the rim a couple times, and she's awful tough to keep in front. It was fun to watch her just create off ball screens where other people were struggling, especially in the first game. So to review a little bit of what we did last time, we talked about 3 different actions or series of actions that we anticipated that you would see as getting into that first preseason game. The first is a spread ball screen. The second piece is a little bit of a step up, and the third is what we called wide, which is just a screen away out of 5 out. They showed all 3 in different ways, a bunch of different times over the course of the game. We'll review it and we'll show a little bit of people in concepts. And these clips are actually from both preseason games. So we get a chance to see a wide range of players in some of these actions. So the first thing we talked about was spread ball screen. As we get into it, most of the time this action is something they used in transition, off a defensive rebound, off a turnover, if there's no advantage created. This is really where this action creates the best. It's not really an action into an action, it's just a simple ball screen trying to create an advantage. So here you see Kiki Rice, you see Feg Benley communicating that she's coming over to set the screen, and we have Brittany Sykes in a really good spot on that weak side to create some space as the ball screen happens. Ball screen action happens, pretty good screen set, nice wide base, an advantage created. And this is where Kiki Rice does really good job. She's physical guard, so she can finish through contact. She can take a little bit of a bump and not get pushed off her line. And you can see her getting downhill after a little bit of hezzy and then finishing going left. So very simple action, not a lot of movement around. Here we have a situation, ball gets kicked out. Now you have Maddie Rocky with the ball. This is not in transition, but it's a little bit of a scramble situation. After a kick out pass, you have Tioni Key coming to set it. Connecticut played a little bit of different ball screen defense where they were trying to force it away from the screen, or what some people will call an ice or a lock or blue sometimes. But you can still see that they're not in perfect position. So Rocky's still able to turn the corner and going middle. You can see that the initial help defender there and an elbow that's a little bit late, and a nice little floater. Probably a good idea not to try to get to the rim against Griner. It was a legit 6'9". Now some of the other concepts. We didn't necessarily talk about this, but Sykes in a ball screen, you could see her quality. And she was just able to be way more dynamic and a little bit more creative about situation. So spacing is not great. You probably want that player at the top, number 2, which is Scat, all the way to the corner. You want Alamand over a little bit, creating space. Kia's not in a bad position there at the bottom of the screen in the strong side corner. Defense cheats, but just based on her athleticism or quickness and her understanding of ball screen, she doesn't use it. She does something what we call rejecting, or going away from the ball screen to create an advantage, because the defense anticipates you using the screen, very similar to the last 2 that we've shown. Another concept here, we talked about creating space for the ball, especially with a dynamic ball handler like Sykes. Screen gets set up nice and high. It's Key setting it. They're a little bit slow getting to their spacing. Juscat should be up in the strong side corner. You have Alamond on the opposite 45, and this is what we called a burn cut. So Alamond will actually back cut and continue to fill through, and it's to open up space around the nail or around the opposite elbow so that the ball has room to create an advantage here. And you can see here, you've created an advantage. The guard's going downhill against their forward. You've created space, and that forward's in trouble against someone like Sykes. So even though help came over, foul wasn't called. That's a great advantage at the rim, and she's going to finish that 9 times out of 10. Another one of the concepts, and just to tidy this up a little bit, we showed it through spread but we also showed it through a double ball screen. I know Brad calls this a 77. That's something that's used a lot in the NBA. You can see here, Maddie Rocky has the ball. We have Feg Benley, who's coming to set the first screen. And you can see that Kia is almost showing like she's going to set a second ball screen. So it's a double ball screen, or otherwise what we're going to call it a 77. As the screen happens, Kia fakes it and runs underneath the ball screen in what we call a flea cut. And it does exactly the same thing. It's opening up all that space around the elbow for Rocky to turn the corner. The other thing, too, is it creates a little bit of confusion about who's coming over and supporting the ball in ball screen situations. You can see Kia's check thinking, do I have to go or do I need to stay with mine? And then Griner's even in a situation where she's like, do I go? Do I stay? And that confusion and space allows the ball to turn the corner. Now, we've got one more here. First ball screen happens, second person cuts underneath, creates space for the ball, post rolls, and they play out of it from there. Not the same advantage. Minnesota was watching it a little bit, and I think we got one more clip of a flea concept that Brad really liked because it accidentally ended up in the spacing that he ended up in. Now, here's an interesting situation where you actually have two people away from the basketball. And this is actually Mabry, Dara Mabry, who's standing right in front of Coach Brondello at the bench. She's in the wrong spot. So she's actually going to get yelled at a little bit that she should be going through. She's actually in the position that Aaliyah Nye should be in. But instead of going through and filling the opposite corner, she actually stays there. And it actually creates the type of spacing that Brad talked about before. If you empty the corner on the same side as the ball screen, and you still flea cut, you create all sorts of confusion about who's supposed to support the ball, but also all sorts of confusion about who's supposed to be supporting the roll. If Aaliyah Nye's check comes down and helps on Tiona Key, she's wide open for the three. Otherwise, you're going to have a layup or a little dump to the post. And as you see the ball get down, actually both of them are open. I think Rocky could have hit Key going to the rim, or if she made some sort of creative pass behind her, Naya's there and there's no one to support that backside. Everyone is sort of around or in front of the basketball. So this is a really difficult situation to be in, and one that I think that they could use, especially late game situations, if people get used to that action, that pitching behind or that little roll to the post.
Now, if you just go back to the start of this one, Nate, one point with the running, what we're indicating is that flea cut. This one, there's naked corner, meaning no one's there, but it's the same rule. Now, if you're the person running the flea cut, so the rule is, the general rule is you have to go circle under before the post is going to start their roll, because we obviously don't want a log jam right in the middle of that screen. So as we've got 7 going to set the screen here, you see the cuts going. You know, she loops this a little deep. It doesn't, maybe the circle cut or the flea cut doesn't have to be that deep underneath, but she goes, so we turn the corner. Now you need 7 to hard roll and put pressure on the rim there. And I think you can see now on the court, she could flea cut that back up to the slot, or she could even go out to the corner, the 45, because you've got that whole area cleared out, depending on what your defender's doing. I really like this scenario if you run this type of action earlier in the game with someone in the corner. I like this one late in the game because it really isolates that player for an isolation, for a kick out, and no defender can help. Like, as you can see here, as she circles under the cut, keep it, let the clip roll. Like, there's no one on on her side of the floor now to help. So that really sets an isolation there. You've got a good shooter. You've got someone that take a couple of dribbles for a pull-up, an isolation. That's a really nice, I think, late game piece of action to set up for someone that you want to get a shot. Or the defense is going to have to play them and stick to them, and it might make the roller a little bit more open for a layup potentially as well.
Yeah, and I know this was by accident. I just thought it actually worked out almost perfectly. And they settle for contested layup, but there's all sorts of opportunities behind the basketball for layups and kick out threes. So might be something to keep in your back pocket if you're Coach Brondello to use a little bit later on in the season. But just a happy accident, worked out really well.
Now, Nate, if we could go back to the clip beforehand, I wanted to point out here. So, again, back to some flea action. If we just set it right up from the top, so Rice is going to bring it across. Okay, here comes Seven with the ball screen, and we see the flea cut circling under. Now, go back a little bit. So, one thing I think that different players and different situations and coaches are really going to harp on is screening, right? So you've got to be able to set a good screen. Seven has to be able to set this screen on the ball with her feet set, so it's not a moving or illegal screen. Now, Rice does not, in my opinion, is not doing a great job of bringing her player down to the level of the screen. Okay, there's a two-way street on screening. One, it's the person using the screen, and one, the screen that's being set. So what I will say, Seven does a nice job here. She's nice and wide. She wants, we call popper feet, which means your feet are going to be stable. And now it's Rice's job to use this screen, and then you're going to have to see how the defense plays it. So in this situation, the defender's trailing the screen, the fleece circle under is going, and now we want Seven with a hard rim cut to the basket. So as we continue to go through the clip here, okay, if I'm Rice, I would probably probe this a little bit more. I would probably try to get a little bit deeper into the paint. I don't think anything's really stopping her potentially from getting deeper. You see the cut number Seven's a little late. She should be sprinting more at the basket. Okay, because if she sprints more at the basket, the corner right now, you can see the weak side corner, her man is right under the basket. So if she has that kick out as well, but if the rim cut was going a little bit faster, it's gonna immobilize her a little bit even more to play the rim. Okay, now when she makes this pass back out, okay, now all of a sudden, what advantage has been created for the offense? So that ball screen spread type actions, what this winds up turning into is you have to make a decision once you catch the ball immediately. You've got to pass, shoot it, dribble it immediately, or your advantage is going to be gone, right? And then we're back into isolation, or maybe we have to come and set another ball screen to try and create that advantage. So what you see on the rest of this tempo possession, and Nate let it play out there, is, there's kind of a dribble handoff to do it again, but you see the ball stayed one-sided. Look at, now hold it right there. Like the spacing, you've got four players, like all on one side of the court. Okay, in this situation, the spacing is very poor, in my opinion. And again, you're going to see that in the preseason. It's not a well-oiled machine. Offenses are going to be not well spaced and doing things at a high volume as they're going to be doing at the end of the season here. So let the rest of the clip play. Okay, we had to get another ball screen. Rice did get deep. She had a very makeable shot there. So ultimately, they got a pretty good look and shot at the basket. But we're going to see a lot of this stuff get a lot better as the season goes through, and it's going to be pretty rough at this point.
Yeah, and one of the comments that keeps coming out in some of the media is they want to play 0.5 basketball. So I'm assuming that what they mean is 0.5 seconds. So you should be able to get into the next action, the next phase, whether it be shot, drive, pass, within 0.5 seconds of touching the basketball. Everyone's had a little bit different definition of what that looks like, but really trying to eliminate some of the pauses. And if you create an advantage, how do you keep that advantage? Rather than like what Brad said, where you throw the ball behind, now everyone's matched up and you're almost sort of neutral. There's no advantage gained. And now you've got to do something else to create an advantage. So it's how do you keep that action going? How do you find the right player to make that pass to so that you can continue playing off of that?
Yeah, it's a 0.5 basketball. What we refer to it as RBC, read before catch. Again, you want that the 0.5 concept. You've got 0.5 seconds to do something with the ball once you catch it, because you got to keep some advantage. You got to penetrate, and that's where your spacing is going to be paramount, and it's going to be key, because if you got to do something with it as soon as you catch the ball and almost have that decision made, you got to have good spacing, and you don't want to be a crowd and have extra defenders around, and you want to maximize the space on the court as much as you can.
Mm-hmm. Now, next one isn't so much a play. It's more of a concept that they use. They use it a bunch of different ways, but essentially a step-up screen. And we talked about this before, but maybe I need to be a little bit more careful about my words or explain things a little bit more. I consider everything a step up to be coming from the baseline up, or maybe even from the outside in, sort of screen to the outside or screen towards the baseline, most likely. People might have a little bit definition or understanding. They might have a different word that they use for this, but essentially, I would say is a step up is a screen going towards the baseline or towards the corner. Whereas a lot of times some of the spread ball screen is going more middle, so that's why it wouldn't be a step up screen. So we'll watch a little bit of their concept more than a play that they ran. So again, scramble situation, ball gets kicked out. Instead of setting a screen to the middle of the court, you see Tione Key stepping up to set a screen for Kiki Rice, going towards the baseline or going towards the baseline, or yeah, going towards the sideline or the baseline on this. Not a lot of contact created, not a lot of advantage. Now, lucky enough, Rice is a pretty strong player so that she can use that bump to make a kick out pass, maybe a little bit of a dirty pass or a pass that the shooter has to catch and then get into her shot pocket or into her shot routine. But a little enough of an advantage created that she could find the kick out pass to Giscott and just a missed shot off of that.
Now, Nate, if you go back again to the
Please.
start there, and we've already pointed out, I think on this ball screen, to make ball screen, hold it right there, to make ball screen more effective and to eliminate moving screens, because again, a screen is a two-way street. Got to be able to set it up and use it, and you got to be able to screen. She has to let her teammate here, Seven, set the screen, right? So I don't think that Rice did a phenomenal job here setting up the screen. You know, you want to get her into a level of the screen, let her to be able to set it. Because as you watch the film go, okay, she never really got to a position where there was a screen. Okay, might have the same effect. She wound up getting relatively deep, which is still good offense. But you know, Seven going to be a willing screener. You got to let her set the screen there, and you see how tight Rice is being played. Her defender should be easy to screen, right? If she's going to play her that tight, you know, we want to get that separation off the screen. We like our screeners as well to sprint out. You want the screener to have separation from their defender. It's going to make that ball screen defense tougher to play. Let the clip go. She's still able to sort of bully her way in there. Okay, keep going as she's going to get deeper into the paint. Keep going. Play it right to the kick out. Okay, now Rice has got to make a better pass here. Okay, so the pass probably hurt her teammate from making a 0.5 decision in this situation because the ball, you know, is so low at her feet. It's not going to be a great situation for her to shoot it. Obviously, there's a one more kick out right up to the top potentially as well. You see how flat the defense is at this point. Here is where the offense has to keep the advantage. So she better be shooting it. She better be dribbling it. She should be passing it. So obviously the dribble might not be great because there's already a cloud of people down near the rim of the basket. She should be shooting that, or she should be making the one more pass immediately. This is stuff they're going to be working on constantly in practice, working on drilling, watching on film, because they're trying to produce the highest percentage and quality of shot that they can.
Yeah, and the one more pass is such a big part as you get to a higher and higher level. Good basketball teams aren't going to give you the first kick-out pass. It's how do you create that next pass to get to the next shot or the next drive to get to your second penetration. But yeah, very rarely you're going to have just a straight kick-out pass to a three.
So as you let this play, she delayed a little bit there, probably also threw her shot off. But again, wasn't the greatest pass in the world as well. We always talk about, again, I know no one plays baseball anymore, and you know, maybe no one listening to this podcast ever played baseball or knows nothing about baseball. In baseball, there's a strike zone. Okay, so in the strike zone, it's like almost like armpits to your knees, and the pitcher wants to throw in that area because those are strikes. So we talk about when you're throwing passes out to teammates, you want to throw strikes. You want to throw it in that area so they can catch it easily. You know, they can still be able to have their vision on the court and see everything that's going on in front of them. If you're going to throw it where they have to jump for it, you're going to throw it at their feet like this pass was, you're again negating advantage. and it's going to be hard to play .5 basketball in that way for her to make a quick decision. And it's also going to affect her shot. If you throw a strike, a lot greater chance of making that shot than if you throw it at her feet. So that's where precision passing becomes very important.
Just a shout out to some of my former provincial team coaches. On time, on target. I think I must have said it about 1,000 times the first summer I worked with them, and they still make fun of me for it.
But Nate, what my little league, I played little league baseball. You know what he always used to say? He always used to say, and it's stained in my brain. He always used to say, if you can't catch, you can't play. That's what he always used to say. And primarily at that age, and it was for your own safety because you might get hurt. But otherwise, same thing goes in basketball. You can't catch, you can't
Did you
play.
get hit in the head a couple times playing Little League baseball?
Never. I
Oh,
had great hands. I had great hands, phenomenal hands. Caught everything. No chance I was ever going to take one off the melon.
I assumed so. All right, now we're in a situation very similar. This time, this is actually an action that they get into a fair bit through some of the other sets that they run. So anytime that they end up with the ball in a guard's hands with a forward below them, whether it be in the corner or if the guard catches the ball up top with the forward at the 45, they'll come to screen if they're just in their motion concepts or their flow concepts. So here you can see Sykes is catching the ball. You have Tiona Key, who's coming out of the corner to set a step-up screen from the baseline. And all the same concepts work the same for step-ups as they would for spread or any other ball screen. If the defense is cheating, like you can see the defense is right now, making sure that they're not creating an advantage coming off that step-up, you can always reject and go away from the screen. And this is the one thing Sykes does an exceptional. She doesn't need much space to create an advantage here. You can still see at the top of the screen you have Alamond ready for kickout passes. Her check is starting to come down and provide some early help or initial help, and that's something that she might be able to use a flea cut or a burn cut. But in this situation, she's created enough advantage that the help can't stop the drive and take away the three. So Alamond is open on this kickout pass, but Sykes is so good about getting into that space and creating an opportunity at the rim. So step up screen, but still a reject, create an advantage and a good shot at the rim. And again, she'll make more of those than not, and that's a good shot for her in the way she finishes.
And I think fundamentally in any ball screen situation, what you're taught at a young age usually, and what coaches preach is always look to reject. If you're the ball handler, look to reject the ball screen first. One, because just like Sykes did there, you might get penetration right into the paint and keep the defense honest. But also if the defense reacts to that reject, then it might help set up the ball screen to where the screen is being set from. So in that case, it'd be middle. It might help set it up more. So, interesting. Sykes played that one preseason game. She did reject a bunch of ball screens, something I would continue to look at as she plays. Obviously, she's looking to do that. And if it's taken away, I'm sure it'll help set the ball screen up back for her if she does wind up taking it.
And one of the things that we always do is we look at a lot of the efficiencies through synergy. And we talked about synergy before and some of what they're able to do as far as video breakdown at all levels. There are so many players that score way better rejecting ball screens than using them. There's some that are almost looking rejection first and foremost, and then that's their primary look in ball screen situation. You lose the advantage maybe to create the next opportunity or create the next piece of your set or your action, but you just create so many more scoring opportunities. Now, this action is more of what we would call a gets, which is similar to a ball screen. It's where you throw the ball ahead to the post and then you run and get it back, or you get a quick handoff back. Now, some wouldn't consider this a gets because it's a little, or a step up because it's a little bit more in the middle of the court. But again, the screen is coming from the baseline trying to get downhill. So here you have a situation where Rice throws it ahead to Jusquette. She's going to sprint to get it back, and it almost sort of turns into a step up situation. So gets and ball screens a lot of times can be used interchangeably. The advantage is it puts a little less pressure on the guard to be able to handle the ball, and it just gets your post a little bit more involved in decision making with it. So here you can see there's a situation where Scott throws or gives it back to Rice. She might actually be in a situation here where she could fake that handoff and turn and play herself too. So just a similar concept, but just a little bit different way of approaching. Rice still gets downhill. They clear the corner. So Held is actually cut out of that strong side corner to create even more space. I'm not necessarily sure she had to, but you can use that for backdoor opportunity to create a little bit more room. And again, Rice gets all the way down to the rim. And funny enough, Held does a good job of vacating to the opposite corner and gets a wide open shot from that. But another great way to
Well,
create an opportunity.
yeah, and I think to your point on that clip, Held probably should have, no pun intended, held the corner, because as you can see on this clip, her man just winds up staying and helps on penetration, right? If she would have stayed in the corner, right? So she's helping on penetration there. Now, Held does wind up getting a decent shot on the other side, but if she would have held the strong side corner and her man helped, she would have had a wide open three in that corner, or Rice probably gets all the way to the basket, or Griner would have to come and help, and then there's other opportunities to pass potentially for layups and other things. So again, all part of the early preseason stuff, trying to understand the spacing. Obviously, a lot of them are pros and they've played other seasons and understand what's going on, but maybe there's some particular spacing and cutting things that the coaching staff with the tempo want them to do and explore as well. Also you have a rookie here in Rice coming off that gets action. And she makes a good jump stop right here as well. She doesn't try to force anything, works off of 2 feet, which is always important when you get into the key is jump stopping and being able to make decisions and working off of 2 feet. So good decision there.
Mhm. Next action is what we call snapback or a pass behind or where you came from off the ball screen situation. So it takes a little bit of time to get into it. You could argue maybe not a step up, but the concept is something they use either in a naked corner, in the direction that the ball's going towards. Sometimes they'll have that person either cut through or not be in that spot. This situation, both players or both corners are filled. Post does a good job of rolling, and then the next person behind the action is cutting into that space. And really what you're trying to do is you're trying to attack that initial help defender. So you can see here, Tiona Key has done a good job of getting to the rim. Her check is Regan Beers, who's a little bit more trying to get into recovery. And Scott is cutting behind the ball, and her check has actually gone down to support against Tiona Key. So the snapback, a lot of the times you can get open shots, you can get drives on little closeouts, or if they don't help on the roll, a lot of times you can get into a high-low or a relay pass to the post in this situation too. This is a situation where they don't recover and they give her up a wide open jump shot. But a lot of times, especially as players are getting used to ball screen, they'll see opportunities in front of them. And so many times with the way that teams rotate and support against ball screen, it's actually the passes behind you are the ones that are most difficult to guard, but they're also the ones that are most difficult to see because you need to be able to see behind you. You need to be able to use a dribble to find a lane. So it's a little bit tougher pass, but it's a way harder pass to be able to guard in ball screen situations.
Yeah, and again, like we mentioned before, just in any ball screen situation, the spacing's so important, right? Like if you go back to that clip a little bit, Nate, as we're going through here, so we get from the start. Okay, so what there may be some confusion about the ball screen. Now, ball screener, there wasn't much of a screen there, so be it. She needs to sprint now to the front of the rim. She needs to put pressure on the front of the rim, and as you can see, we have Held in the corner. Her defensive man's going to come over and help on that. I'm not Held was probably thinking she might have to come set a screen, but she should probably be holding the corner a little bit better to create more space. She keeps creeping in a little bit, which is probably not helping, right? And then that caused confusion. So the top person who was up top playing, who's going to catch the ball right now, she went with the cut for some reason. So this is where shooting is important, is extremely important in ball screen situations, because as cuts go, as mistakes or defensive decisions are being made, it's going to lead to some perimeter shots and perimeter penetration. And this is a high quality 3-point shot. This is wide open, and now, I guess whatever your offensive rebounding schemes or whatever you're going to do in that regard, you get people to the offensive glass. Some people are getting back, however you do that. But that, these are professional athletes creating high percentage quality threes. They're going to have to make a high percentage of those good looks.
think one of the last step up clips, special situation, think out of a timeout, looking for a score, trying to get their two best players involved in a screening action. So a simple pass from Elamon to Sykes. Elamon fakes like she's going to cut through and then sets up a screen. It's guard to guard. A lot of times you would run this to try to get the matchup you want. So in the situation here, it's probably want to try to get Sykes isolated against Olivia Miles and have other people sort of create space. Not great space away from the ball as you have three people essentially all in the weak side corner, which is not a way to force teams to really have to rotate very much. Creates the matchup that they want, creates a little bit of space for Sykes. Now she does end up offensive fouling, but it's just to create a little bit of a matchup. So it's a guard to guard screen. You can anticipate a switch, but really it's just to create the matchup you want in space to allow your best player to create an advantage off the ball.
Yeah, all these teams, they'll have everyone scouted and everyone will have strengths and weaknesses. So that is more than likely a targeted defender that they want. They wanted that switch to occur. They were anticipating that switch. Sykes takes the ball screen off of Held's defender. They want Held's defender covering Sykes, and then they're going to clear out that whole side of the floor for her to penetrate because they think she's probably a worse defender on penetration in that situation. Over help comes, that's when now the spacing is going to be important. She's going to have to spray the ball out to somebody to keep that advantage. But that's typical professional basketball right there. The player, skill is so high that we're going to target another defender and just create an advantage off a straight matchup, and we're going to try to penetrate by you or go by you to create an advantage.
And watching New York play in the playoffs last year, Coach Brondell has been sort of an expert at how do we keep actions really simple? How do we just create the matchup or the situation we want for our best players and just allow our best players to play? So she very much is a pro coach in terms of she's very much always thinking about what's my personnel? How do I find a way to create a better advantage for my best player, maybe on one of your worst defenders, and then just allow them to play and create off of that? So 5 out, which is probably the one that they did the least amount of the three concepts that we showed. The wide concept of the screen away. However, they did all the same stuff that we thought they would out of wide, but also a lot of times more out of staggers this year. And stagger screens, which is essentially a double screen where they're not together, they're staggered a little bit so that they're using a double screen to get someone open off of that. A lot of the situation they're doing it, they're setting a double stagger away to a player who's in the corner, who's coming back towards the basketball and then running action off of that. And staggers is something you're seeing a tremendous amount in the NCAA and men's and women's basketball internationally, at least on the women's side, I don't know as much on the men's side. And you're seeing it a ton in the WNBA. So this is a very popular concept. So they've taken a lot of the same things that they've done out of wide or a single screen and turned it into staggers away for the opposite corner. So
Yeah, again, a lot of this action fits into, we're going to run potentially some pre-action before we get into the action probably that we want, right? So a lot of this staggered action, again, tough for the defense to play. There's different actions you can run off of that double down screen. That double staggered action probably results into a ball screen somewhere at the end if we don't get anything out of that. But again, making the defenders make decisions. They're going to have to go through all this in scouting before the game and how they're going to play it. And then you can manipulate some pieces to try and get some of the matchups that you want.
the other thing it does too is that it allows you to play 5 out or really play only one post. And I think there's going to be times when Toronto has to go small, so it gives you a little bit more an advantage or a little bit more flexibility to be able to run one post and four guards or four perimeter players out there. It also disguises a little bit more because it fits into some of their 5 out action that we're going to talk about and some of the things that we haven't covered. But it also fits in with their spread ball screen, their double drag or the 77 action. All the action is sort of disguised a little bit because it all starts from the same spot. So the first one is what I call a flip. So you have your wide screen to create an advantage or create that first pass, a little flip back to the guard who initiated the offense. You can see they're a little bit slow getting into the action, but it turns into a ball screen. And then in the situation, in fact, Bentley actually slips it, doesn't really screen. She rolls to the rim. And then they get into the snapback action, which we talked about before, and a good shot at the rim and a foul for just Scott getting to the line. So a little bit slow, a little bit sloppy, still preseason, but the action is still there. Flip into an away screen, or this is what we call a veer screen an awful lot. So the first action is flip, the ball comes back to the point guard, not really a ball screen, but then the forward continues on and sets a veer screen for the next player to be able to create, and Kia creates a foul off of that action. This time, this is what we talked about, staggers instead of a wide action. So you actually see two players go on a screen for Kia. After the screen here, you'll have Balagoon exit to the corner or exit to a wing. They get into that little flip back to the guard and then into the veer screen rather than a ball screen. And again, creates a little bit of a foul up top, I believe, towards the end of this. Oh, no, open shot, wrong clip. Here, this is a situation where you saw wide and staggers the most. They used it as an offense that they can use in flow, but they also use this in sideline out of bounds. So a little bit of a dead ball, similar spacing, but they can use all the same concepts. So the guard comes through off the staggers away, ball comes back to the guard, and then they get into a quick ball screen. Not a lot of contact, but it still creates an advantage to get downhill. Little bit of a dirty pass, but there was a little bit of an advantage gained. Here again, this is wide from sideline, the flip into the ball screen, no real ball screen set into the veer, and then they play off of that. And this one, Kia picks up a little bit of a foul going to the rim. Or maybe not. Don't have the sort of the lead up to this because a lot of times when you're watching professional basketball, they don't show you the start of a sideline out of bounds, but it's from 5 out. It's that wide screen, and instead of the ball coming back to the guard, it turns into a high ball screen. Same situation where they have a roll, a snap back behind, and then they continue the play into a little bit of a step up into an open shot for held. This is something that's not a great clip, but this is a concept that Coach Brondello has used in the past. If the guard is taking a wide screen and they either backdoor or they curl it and they're not available, the ball can always be thrown to the forward. And then most of the time what will happen is the guard who curled or back cut will set a back screen for the passer. Now from this, you're not often going to get a shot at the rim, but it's going to be the next person coming from that handoff that a lot of times gets into that open jump shot. So if the guard curls or backdoors off that away screen or that wide screen, and the ball goes to the forward, it triggers a back screen and then a handoff for the guard who set the screen, which is a tough action to cover. And then that's the last one.
Yeah, no, all great actions. Obviously, as we continue to, as mentioned, as we continue to go through the season, they're going to be able to run it at a little bit higher pace. That execution is going to be better, which is going to make it more difficult to play. But again, you got to be able to set the screens all, and then you get to all the details, the nuances, being able to set up those screens, being able to, to set proper screens as well is going to improve all the shot quality and penetration possibilities that all this is going to set up.
And one of the nice things about watching Coach Brondello play or her teams play is that there's a lot of continuity between the different levels, whether it be the Australian national team, some of the teams that she's coached in the W before. But it's kind of neat to see how she tweaks things to sort of match their personality. And now that we're starting to see them a little bit more in game situations rather than just clips on social media, it's starting to come together, and it's nice to see some familiarity from some stuff she's done in the past and some new little wrinkles or new emphasis that she shows. And I'm looking forward to watching her teams play over the course of the year so that we can start to see what makes sense or some new little bits and pieces that we haven't seen before.
Yeah, absolutely. Any thoughts here, Nate, as we're wrapping it up? Thoughts moving forward before our next pod?
No, I would ask people to be a little bit patient with us as we figure out some of the technical stuff. Hopefully some of this is useful as you watch some of the games, and then for coaches out there, hopefully some of this is useful for you as you start to work with your teams and start to figure out what, like, maybe little bits and pieces that you like or that fit with what you do. I would also say that if there's anything that you guys want to see, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at talkingtempo@gmail.com. We would really like to tailor this to our audience and for those that are interested in the tempo, but also those that are just interested in basketball and learning a little bit more about some of the technical, tactical side that you and I talk about quite often in the office. So, no, I'm looking forward to this. But please don't hesitate to reach out if there's some stuff that you guys would like to see.
Yeah, definitely. Please, any questions or reach out by email, as Nate said, talkingtempo@gmail.com. We're also on Instagram at Talking Tempo. If you haven't, we've got some extra content there, some post-game reactions. You might even see a food review potentially when we get to the Coca-Cola Coliseum for Friday. And also the Just Straight Audio podcast. You can find us on Spotify as well. Again, Talking Tempo. If you search Talking Tempo, you can pull up the audio podcast. Thank you, everyone, if you made it this far, for listening. We really appreciate it. We're going to try to drop most of these pods on Mondays throughout the season, as we'll usually tape it over the weekend at some point. Again, really appreciate it, and we'll see you next time.